Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another webinar Wednesday hosted by the Cal State Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the center and your host for webinar Wednesday number 370. And we got a great topic today. It's on manufacturing in the San Joaquin Valley to be a little more specific. A lot of great resources that are out there, a big emphasis on returning manufacturing to greatness in the US. And so, smaller manufacturers, really, there's some great opportunities. And we're going to talk about a lot of those opportunities today. Got a great special guest, got some great resources. So, let's get on with Webinar Wednesday. We're going to be talking and also looking at making small manufacturing possible and profitable. We'll bring our special guest, Doug Waterman, out in just a little bit and get on with that process. And we will be talking a lot about the resources that are available to help you make a profitable manufacturing business. We'll also be discussing today the commitment from the U.S. Small Business Administration and others to manufacturing and to bringing back a strong manufacturing base in the U.S. Our two normal regular features on Webinar Wednesday are Capital Quarter and the Economic Corner. So first of all, Capital Quarter will focus on some of the manufacturing loan programs and loan opportunities, some of the ways to access capital for manufacturers out there. We'll be also talking about on Economic Corner some of the challenges and hopefully some of the solutions to those challenges that are faced by manufacturing businesses. A lot going on in the economic sector of things, and so kind of trying to look at some of the challenges out there, but also potentially some of the solutions. We're hoping today to give you some marketing, manufacturing assistance to guide you. We will have your answers to your questions. So if you have a question, you can go to the Q&A box, generally, I think, under the More tab underneath, or you can go to the chat. And you can go into chat, and we will find your questions there after today's presentation. Our resources from today are going to be in the chat box. So about everything we talk about today, every resource that's out there to help you, every link that our webinar producer Maureen puts in the chat box today is going to be located there to where it's basically grab and go. And yes, we're going to have a poll question today, a couple of fairly simple questions. Let's get those out there and see our poll questions for today. And the first one of two poll questions is going to be which funding options have you explored or used? So if you're aware of manufacturing and friendly funding, some of the funding sources out there, what have you actually used? Um, have you used CDFI or other traditional lenders? Have you used SBA loans, maybe an SBA 7A or 504? Have you done equipment leasing? And some of the options also with renting or leasing, or some of the alternative sources of funds that are out there, being crowdfunding and other programs. So, single choice to today's first Webinar Wednesday question on which funding options have you explored or used? Have you used any of the community development financial institutions? And generally, those are smaller loans, but not always. Generally, the smaller or some other non-traditional lenders. Have you used SBA funding, either be a 7A or a 504 loan program? Equipment leasing, a viable option and a very good funding option. Have you tried it, or have you looked at some of the alternative sources? One of those, and we throw in there crowdfunding just because, it's a great way of funding some pre-paid manufacturing, particularly through the use of products. So we're going to end our first poll question. We got about 70% of you participating, so we'll end that poll and share the results with you. And we find that 57% of you have used some form of SBA funding, either be a 7A, 504, maybe it's even another product that they have, one of their microloans, or potentially even their community development project. We have 29 of you that have used equipment leasing and 14 CDFI or non-traditional lenders. So thank you for poll question number 1. We will open up poll question number 2. And our second poll question of our poll questions today isn't wanting to open up at all. So we will try that again. Oh, and it's such a great program question too. Okay. So there is that one. There we go. What is your biggest manufacturing challenge? Is it labor availability or skill gaps, equipment or manufacturing cost, cash flow and working capital, sales and customer acquisition, or getting started, capital and technical assistance in starting the business? So, generally, we do have quite a few challenges out there for manufacturers, and one of those is the availability of certain skills for manufacturers. Or could it be your equipment or manufacturing cost? Could it be cash flow or working capital, sales and customer acquisition, or just getting started manufacturing and you're looking for capital and other technical aspects and advice? So, your biggest challenge as a manufacturer. We are looking for that and give you another moment or two to jump in and ask that. So give you one last second. We're going to end the poll, share the results with you, and end up with a three-way tie at 29%, equally paying across the border for labor availability, for cash flow and working capital, and for sales and customer acquisition, 29% of you. And bringing up the rear would be getting started, 14%, and the machinery and equipment costs come in at 0%. So thank you. Thank you very much for participating in that particular poll, and let's move right along. So as some of you might know, our economic corner takes a look at the economy and looks at the economy for you, and there's a lot in there on manufacturing. So what we did was we kind of focused that today on just a general statement. And our general statement, rather than specific examples that we'll get to in a moment, were basically manufacturers today are being squeezed from both higher cost and tighter capital, while still being expected to produce faster, cheaper, and more reliably. That is kind of a consensus that we get at times. So we're going to run with that as far as the economic corner and look at some of the challenges, some of the economic challenges that are faced by today's manufacturers. Well, one of the challenges is obviously a relatively high interest rate and cost of capital. While interest rates have dropped about a half a point in the last, say 4 to 5 months, they're still at relatively higher rates than most of us are used to. And that cost of capital makes borrowing more expensive and makes it a little bit more difficult. So as part of a solution, though I don't want to throw challenges without throwing you a solution, is we might want to look also at some of the options that are available. There's a lot of alternative funding. There's other ways that you can raise capital. And so, it's a great opportunity for you to look at your cost of capital if you have multiple borrowing sources and to try to reduce or eliminate those particular costs. The second challenge is persistent labor shortages and wage pressure. Well, being located here in the San Joaquin Valley, you do have wage pressure with a minimum wage and then an expectation of a premium paid on top of that. So with the minimum wage at $16.90, definitely that wage pressure is there. But there's also labor shortages, and oftentimes these labor shortages are in particular fields to where it is a little bit more difficult to find somebody in particular fields, particularly maybe the skilled labor fields. So maybe some of the solutions would be maybe targeted automation to where you use maybe some upgrades and look at some robotics for repetitive tasks. Maybe there are some software enhancements that can help as far as technology. So maybe a technology aspect to it. Also, maybe there's a worker training program. There's some worker training programs that are out there. Some come to mind, such as programs through America's Job Center that might be able to leverage some working force grants in order to help train for particular shortages that you have. So those are a couple of the ideas, or maybe there's a solution for the labor aspect of it. We'll also look at another challenge, and that is input costs volatility. And essentially, by not having diversified suppliers, oftentimes that can lead to a real issue about having cost by depending to single source a particular cost of a particular material. So maybe what you look at is you look at that supplier diversification. Maybe there are shorter pricing windows when quote with expiration dates or materials, and those were really common a couple of years ago with higher inflation. But look at shorter pricing windows and quote with certain dates, materials, etc. Also, some inventory financing. This kind of goes back into bullet number one, also with the cost of capital. But there are good sources of inventory financing, oftentimes accounts receivable financing, and by using lines of credits and other ways in order to cut that down. Number four is the supply chain fragility. It's having a fragile supply chain is really something that we've been dealing with for a little while. And maybe some of your solutions could be maybe instead of offshoring, nearshoring and looking at local sourcing when feasible. Perhaps looking at some strategic inventory buffers for critical components that you might have. And maybe doing some supply chain mapping. I know having a supply chain major within our College of Business and Public Administration at CSUB, there are some supply chain experts, students that maybe could help you as well. Going down to our fifth bullet on softening demand and customer caution, that is obviously a real concern, and it's a challenge that manufacturers are seeing. Consumers are a little bit tighter than they were before, and maybe some of the businesses that you work with and sell to as well. So some of the solutions that we might have for this particular bullet could be customer diversification. So maybe you're looking at not your current customer base, but maybe trying to improve your customer base, which is always great. Oftentimes, as businesses, we get kind of stuck with the business that we have as a customer rather than those that we target. And maybe by using some enhanced marketing programs and other things, maybe there's more flexibility in production, scheduling, and maybe some more value-based selling. So those are a few of the things that can maybe soften that budget. And then, oh boy, let's don't go to cash. Right? Okay, so cash flow timing expenses. Obviously, as a manufacturer, oftentimes or almost always, your sales are going to be on credit. So either a credit sale or maybe if it's a cash sale, there's a little less certainty from those cash certain businesses that get paid every single day. So by having that, your terms are going to be very important and a lot of your working capital tools. But really getting into that terms and being able to maybe have an early pay discount, progressive billing, some upfront deposits. Love upfront deposits when it comes to manufacturers. If you could do that and get more of the payment up front, it's always better. You know how I feel here about cash forecasting. And so with cash forecasting, we've been rolling out and we've been talking a lot lately about our 13-week rolling cash flow, and that could be tied to a production schedule. So I think another thing that you can really help out on the cash flow aspects to rising compliance and operating costs is obviously with more red tape, which hopefully will get eliminated soon, and operating cost. There are ways that maybe we can work around that with looking into some of the red tape and some of the compliance and some of them not only that's going on locally, but potentially also federally and with the state of California. Pressure to modernize without capital. That's a challenge, is really to modernize that facility. And maybe we go back to one of our other financing tools and look at some type of equipment leasing with some form of phased modernization. So maybe you have a longer term plan to where you do stuff over a period of time. So those are some of the ideas. And there's also a lot of resources that SBA has now for manufacturers. Here's a number of things, and I'm sure you'll find those in the particular resource section that's going to be made available to you after the webinar today, but also during the webinar. So that's the Made in America Manufacturing Initiative. Also, there's on some of the SBA loans, we have some SBA borrowers out there um, in 2026 for the fiscal year, which fiscal year would end on September 30th of this year. Fees will be waived. So there's an opportunity to get your fees waived for these loans if you're a small manufacturers. Also looking at some of the workforce development, also the doubling of the limit. So the loan limit has been increased substantially. It's been doubled. Isn't that awesome? And also this make onshoring great again portable, which is, I think, turning into a pretty good resource from what people are telling me to where you can go and look for suppliers, potential buyers, but also really if you have supply chain kinks, that might be a place to go and get that resolved. Our other feature, Capital Quarter, we're going to just mention briefly the MARC program, and that is the manufacturer's access to um, revolving credit. So basically, it's a line of credit that kind of works either as a line of credit or a term loan. And it's really kind of a 7A loan, but can be used also with the 504 loan program. So incorporating two of the most popular SBA programs. Also, the line of credit can help also with working capital. So it's not only to go buy equipment, machinery and equipment, but you can actually pull in some working capital, which is kind of unique for the 504 loan program, which is the fixed asset program for SBA. And also it can be used for any short-term needs whatsoever on that particular aspect. Maybe your solution is to get an AI solution, and maybe you can take advantage of our fantastic teams of student interns that are working with our senior level advisors. Contact me. There's my email address. Our community calendar, we talked about a little about this last week and probably will for a little while longer, but that's free tax preparation through the CSUB VITA program, which is the Volunteer Income Tax Program. Not really for those that have Schedule Cs or incorporated returns, but for those that make less than 70 per year or have disabilities. So maybe you might know somebody. There is a great phone number there to get in contact with. SBA, it's great being a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration, and the Fresno District Office is going to have webinars that you can learn. And there, right there is the QR code. The next one coming up on manufacturing is February 12th, and it is going to be on cutting the red tape. Who doesn't like cutting red tape? Also, on the 26th of February is how to start. So if you're looking at just starting a manufacturing business, don't know where to begin, start with a webinar from the SBA. Also, you'll know that we have a lot of tools at the SBDC that can help your business. One of them is our business planning platform, LivePlan. LivePlan is a great tool for your writing that business plan and getting that business plan working in the right way. Also, Vertical IQ. I think for those of you that have heard the webinar before, you know that I really like this software because it actually will provide you with industrial 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 information and industry on only information. So Vertical IQ will provide that to you, and you can use that with some of our great advising assistants at CSUB. Also, our YouTube channel is where all of our webinars go to rest, and they are there waiting for you all rested up. You can go to our CSUB YouTube channel and subscribe. We have over 520 subscribers. And you might have heard me say, if you are a YouTube influencer with 520 subscribers, you're broke. But we're not. So go there and find the webinar of your choice. It's always available, usually within days of this live webinar. To contact us for confidential, no cost, no obligation expert consulting, sign up at our website, csubsbdc.com. We will then actually reach out to provide you with one of our expert consultants to work with you on a one-on-one basis. And that brings us to our special guest today. And it's Doug Waterman, who is a senior financial executive. He's also a manufacturing consultant with yours truly, the CSUB SBDC. He specializes in operational improvement, strategic finance, business growth for small and mid-sized manufacturers. He's got over 11 years as a senior client advisor with the California Manufacturers Extension Partnership, the MEP program. Has assisted over 100 manufacturers here in the Valley. In addition to his consulting practice, Doug has designed, implemented a lot of different tools to assist manufacturers, brings deep experience in commercial lending, economic development finance, strategic advisory services. It's great to have him as a member of our team. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday, Douglas Waterman, and take it away, please.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate being here and able to reach out to manufacturers in the San Joaquin Valley. As you mentioned, I spent well over probably about 13 years working here in the San Joaquin Valley, principally starting off in Kern County, all of Kern County, and then I got moved up to include Fresno, which meant Fresno County, Madera, and any county north of Fresno as well. First, I'd like to talk about what is manufacturing in the San Joaquin Valley. There are probably 2,500 manufacturing companies in the San Joaquin Valley. It includes all 8 valley counties. It includes food and beverage processing, but it does not include farms and dairies. And I'm going to put that aside for now. We'll talk about that later on. Kern County has 25% of, we believe, about roughly 25% of the total manufacturing in the San Joaquin Valley. 13,000 plus workers are employed in manufacturing in Kern County, which is a substantial payroll, if you think about it. I have worked here in the area for well over 11 years. I've worked with small manufacturing enterprises, or I've worked in the areas of food processing, advanced manufacturing, as well as traditional industrial companies. In other words, machine shops, shops that make tanks, shops that make a whole variety of different types of equipment here in the Valley. I have focused on operational, strategic, and workforce challenges. I've delivered measurable, sustainable improvements. One of my philosophies when I do a project is I'm very interested in what the return on investment is. If we can't determine that there is a return on investment on the project, then I recommend tell the client not to do the project, because he has to have a return. There has to be money. He's going to be putting money out, but he also needs to be able to get money back in on the other side. Some of the core services that we've covered here, we process improvement, of course, which has kind of been a major product that we've worked with for a lot of different clients here. Includes Lean, Six Sigma, value stream mapping, and supply chain issues. We worked with quality and compliance, both the ISO compliance and various certifications, including AS9100, and a lot of food safety, and also OSHA, Cal OSHA safety. On the technology side, we've advised clients for automation. We've helped them put together ERP systems or just an MRP system, which is really focused on inventory and inventory management. And then we've also started talking to people about AI integration. I am a big fan of AI. I use it quite a bit because I'm not the smartest person in the room. So I go to somebody smarter, which is AI. The area of workforce development, I do want to spend some time there. I have some examples that I will talk about, but we talk about a lack of workforce and the fact that it's shrinking and we don't know what to do and where are we going to get the talent. Frankly, what we are faced with is the fact that we have to train our people. We have to cross-train our people. So I have a whole bunch of resources that I could help manufacturers with and help developing a training program, because you're not going to find new people out there. Plus, you also have a bunch of younger people that are a different group of workers. They're interested in understanding what the business is and how the business works, not just their job, but the entire business. So you need, what I've been working with people, what we do is try and get them engaged with the employees. And we could talk more about that later. I also do a lot of M&A support now, which is mergers and acquisitions. It's a fancy phrase, but what happens, nowadays, a lot of the companies, a lot of small businesses, mom and dad are reaching retirement age. They want to turn the business over to their children or to an employee because the children are not interested. And they need to first understand what the company is worth. Not only that, but then if it's worth X amount of dollars, how do we improve the value? I've done a lot of that work with a lot of very small companies, but I also do a lot of mentoring on the other side, working with the children, filling in where they have knowledge gaps. I remember I had one client that is now extremely successful. I spent 2 years teaching him accounting. He didn't really understand what accounting was and how valuable it is and how he could use it to manage his business. Of course, my own, being an old lender, I have done an awful lot of 7A and 504 financing, but I've also done a lot of CDFI financing as well. So I can help clients there, and I have helped clients there. One of the things I work on with several of my clients is explaining to them what they need to say to a bank, what they don't need to say to a bank, and how to present themselves to a bank. Of course, when you need money, you're always going to go to a bank, and that's the time not to go to a bank, because the bank will say, "Oh, you really need us," and then, they want to know why you need us, and so on and so forth. So I work with clients in developing a program where they work with banks before they need any money, keeping them informed and keeping them updated in terms of who you are, what you are, and how you do it. So when the time comes and you need money, they already know who you are. Online skill courses. So you can find employees who run a CNC machine, or they could run it, but they really don't know how to do setups, and maybe they don't know how to do the programming. There are courses in schools and training available to do this. And while most small businesses that I talk to, the owners look at me and say, "But I can't afford to lose them for 2 or 3 hours a day or 1 hour a day or whatever." Well, it's a lot cheaper doing that than not having somebody and having to go out and find somebody and finding somebody who's actually not qualified. And oftentimes that's what happens. So we have to learn to train our people, and we have to just bite the bullet and spend the money and teach people. Offset funding support. Now, when I was with the MEP Center, we had funds, and what we would do is do projects, and we would cut the cost probably by 50 to 75% using funds that we had available for that purpose. Unfortunately, all that's gone away. The terminology that was used by the government when they closed us down was that it was really corporate welfare, and that was something they weren't terribly excited about. However, there are still programs out there, or there are still employee training panel funds. Again, it's focused on training employees. And again, go back to what I said about training. We need to train our employees. Well, there's funding available to help you do that. Some of the workforce development boards in various counties have various programs as well to help reduce the costs of external projects to help train your employees. Cybersecurity. it's not an issue of whether you've been hacked or when you're going to be. It's just an issue of when you're going to be attacked. Every company is vulnerable. Every company uh, either has been hacked and you don't know it, or you're going to be hacked and you may or may not know it. Those companies who are second tier, third tier vendors to defense and aerospace OEMs, there are definite requirements for cybersecurity. They fall on the NIST regulation 800-171. I have spent probably the last 5 or 6 years working with corporations in that particular area. The resources that I work with are extremely good, very talented, and we do it in a very cost-effective manner. So, some of the projects that I've seen that companies like Lockheed and Boeing recommend to their vendors run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. What we're talking about is nowhere near that. Small businesses can't afford those kind of prices to become compliant for cybersecurity. Again, this is just kind of a quick outline of some of the things that we have to offer. Let's talk about some examples. The first example I'd like to talk about is a local area farm that on a seasonal basis, they bring in about 2,000 employees. They have a core group of managers of about 15 people who manage these 2,000 part-time workers. And they were at a point where they're running the risk of losing 2 of their primary customers, which basically effectively would have probably closed them down. We were brought in and we were asked if we could help them. And we said, yeah, we could. And we took the core group of 15 people and spent about 8 weeks teaching them things like, how do you talk to each other, communicate with each other? I'll give you an example. They told a story of they had scheduled a day where they're going to be processing the agricultural product that they raised. And everybody showed up for work, but nobody told the cleaning crew to come in the night before and clean the plant, because many of you know this, but some of you don't. But before you process on a given day, you have to clean every single piece of equipment that's in there. It's all part of the food safety requirements. Well, they didn't do that, so they had to send everybody home and lost an entire day in production. What was the issue there? Communication. They weren't talking to each other. We taught them not only to talk to each other, we taught them how to talk to each other. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours talking to people and communicating with them. You learn to communicate very quickly and you coordinate very quickly. They just weren't coordinating. Production wasn't talking to safety, safety wasn't talking to cleaning, and then the whole thing was a mess. Their operating manual was probably 4 inches thick in English. Now, I couldn't even read the operating manual, and I thought I was pretty good at it. But the fact that it was in English and all the vast majority of the workers that they bring in didn't speak English, they spoke Spanish. So we changed it. We also changed and got rid of all the verbiage and words and put in pictures, because pictures are far more impactful than a whole bunch of words. People can look at pictures and understand what it is that they have to do. We taught the machine operators or the machine managers, they had various lines and they had a manager for each line, to basically spend 5 minutes out of every workday or 10 minutes out of every workday, pull the workers together and spend 10 minutes and ask them 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And what kind of problems do you have? They took all the duct tape away from everybody because the duct tape was being used to kind of fix things whenever things were broken, which not only violated, it was dangerous to do that, but it was also violating food safety rules as well. They had issues with labeling. As you know, when you pack any type of food product, you have to put a date on it and label on it saying what the date is and what the end date is on the life of the product. And what they had all the labels were the same color. So they were, of course, getting mixed up and putting the wrong dates on them, and they even had the wrong, company A would have company B's fruit and vegetables and vice versa. So that was a very simple solution. We simply changed all the color coding, but color coded it by client, by customer. That's how we work with farms. And farms are very, very difficult to work with. I would never presume to tell a farmer how to run a farm. I don't know how to run a farm, but I do know that there are techniques and there are things that they can do to improve their lives and their processes. And there's a book out there called Lean Farming. It's written by a guy named Ben Hartman. He's from the Midwest, and he decided to study Lean Six Sigma. He did so, and he started using all those principles and ended up writing a book for farmers on how you can use these principles to improve your processes and improve problem solving and improve your overall life in general when running a farm. Let's go to the next example. We had a company who was spending incredible amounts of time in meetings. And they would have 15 to 20 people in a meeting. So when you took all the salaries and multiplied it by the number of people and the number of hours, it was costing them an awful lot of money. There's a book out there, and I don't remember the name of the author, but it's called Death by Meeting. And I'm a firm believer in keeping meetings short. So what we did is we retrained them on how to conduct a meeting. You actually write an agenda and you stick to the agenda. You don't leave the agenda. Everybody who comes is prepared. If they're not prepared, you ask them to leave. They have to come back and bring the topic the next time. The only people who show up for the meeting are the people that have something on the agenda, something to talk about. We ended up saving them hundreds of thousands of dollars in meeting time by simply talking through and restructuring and how they conduct a meeting. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But most things that we do are really very simple. It's just that managers and supervisors and owners don't really see them or think about them. Supply chain. Had a company that we were working with. I got a phone call. The owner said, "You got to come in. We're having problems where the shipping is all screwed up. They're not getting stuff out on time." So we came in. And this was one of the projects that I actually got involved in. And turns out that wasn't the issue. The issue was that the production, on the production planning side, instead of planning for orders that came in, they were stocking. I don't know where they got the numbers from or everything, but they felt that they had to stock parts. So they were stocking based on some formula that they had created a long time ago that nobody ever checked. So they were making the wrong item. So the backlog started growing and growing and growing. And of course, shipping was blamed for not getting it out, and it wasn't shipping. They had their own inventory issues in terms of parts not being ordered on time. So we fixed that problem, and they are currently in the midst of implementing an ERP system, which is going to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And this is one of my favorite ones. There was a CFO actually contacted me, and he says, "You got to come in and talk to us because everybody's yelling at each other." And I said, "I'm not sure I can help you. Everybody's yelling. I'm not sure why everybody's yelling." And it turns out that they promote people to supervisors because they're good workers, which is a great thing to do. You want to promote inside, right? But they never taught them how to be a supervisor. And consequently, what they did is they treated people just like they were treated, which meant that everybody's yelling at them. So when somebody has a problem, instead of trying to go to the core reason behind the problem and work with them to fix the problem, they would just yell and scream at them. And obviously, that didn't result in what they wanted to resolve. Aside from the HR issues that all of the screaming created, it interfered with process and efficiency in the plant. So we created a supervisory and management training program. And last time I was there, it was much quieter, other than the sound of machinery, and people were working better together in the process, and they were far more efficient. So those are some of the examples of some of the companies that I've worked with, some of the projects I've worked on. I've worked on a lot more. We it's some of the takeaways of all of this is there are over 2,000 manufacturers in the valley. In Kern County alone, there's over 450 manufacturers. Some don't need us, some are big enough and they have their companies like Wonderful. I would never presume to tell Wonderful how to do a Six Sigma Lean project because they have their own. They even changed the name. They don't call it Lean and Six Sigma, they call it Wonderful something or other. So God bless them, it works. It works for them. But there are other companies that don't have that access to that and really don't understand lean. You mentioned the word lean, and a lot of companies get very upset and they say, "Oh my God, we don't want to do lean because the employees will think we're going to fire them." Well, no, that's not the definition of lean. Lean is really the elimination of waste, and it's not just finding trash on the ground and throwing it away. It's looking at movement, looking at process, looking at we were in a plant and was talking to the operations manager, and I'm talking to him. The young man was assembling parts, assembling a final product, and he had a bench in front of him where he had the part that he was assembling, and the parts were on a cart about 25 feet across the floor. So he'd walk over to the cart, pick up the part, and walk back over to the bench and install it, and then go back and forth. And I'm looking at him, and I turned to the operations manager and said, "Why is he doing that? The cart has wheels. Why does he move the cart over?" Well, yeah, that's one of the problems we have. And I looked at him and said, "No, it's one of the problems you have. That's your job. If you see something like this, you should go over and correct them and correct the problem." So it's, again, we like to blame the employee. The workers are just not, they're lazy. They don't do this. They don't do that. They don't listen to us. Well, we don't listen to the workers oftentimes. And that's when I was talking about engagement. Listen to your workers. This is one of the things that we emphasize and we teach. And one of the things that I've been, when you start listening to workers, a lot of times the problems that you have go away because the workers know that there are problems. They know the solutions and that nobody's ever asked them or they're afraid to say something. So we spend a lot of time working with owners and with senior managers, explaining that to them and working with them. We have a workforce of very talented, very skilled workers that are ready to retire. All that information, how do you capture it? Well, I've talked to owners and they look at me and they say, "Well, they won't teach them." It's not a question of them not wanting to teach people. They don't know how to teach people. So they need to be trained on how to teach people. So that's another way that we work with companies and manufacturers and helping them improve things. So I think I've covered everything. I'm very happy to answer any questions. As Kelly said, I'm very pleased to be part of the current SBDC, and I'm looking forward to working with not just some of my older clients, but with a whole bunch of new clients here in the Valley.
Good stuff, Doug. Let's jump in and start seeing if we have some questions. Great time to ask a question for Doug. You can go to the chat box. You can go to the Q&A box. We'll find them both there. So, Doug, one question I have is, with a lot of the emphasis nowadays on manufacturing, what do you think it takes to really succeed in a new startup manufacturing venture or one that has been around for a while and is looking to grow or expand? What are some of the keys that those entrepreneurs should look for?
Well, let's take it one at a time. Let's take the new venture, the startup. I love working with startups and new companies because you have an opportunity to go in there and start with the basic fundamental lean principles and set them up and apply them and build on them. The whole principle behind lean is called continuous improvement. And what it means is that what you do today, you can always improve on it tomorrow. And you have to always think that way and always look for ways of doing things better. With the older, mature companies who are ready to grow, oftentimes growth is a very frightening thing. Um, my client that I have down here, um, he has grown from $2.5 million in sales, and this year he'll probably do well over $5 million in sales. And it's been due to primarily one client. And he's afraid of that because they keep asking him to do more and more and more. So all of a sudden, his percentage of sales to one client is growing from 12 or 14% up to 20, going, and probably might even hit 25%. He can do it and he can grow it, but he needs capital, okay, which he has. He doesn't know it yet, but he actually does have it. We talked about that. But, you know, again, if you have a workforce that is well trained, a workforce that you talk to, who are not afraid to come back and talk to you, in other words, you engage with them, you can grow. Okay. If you don't have a workforce like that and you're going to go out on the street and you're going to start hiring new people and you don't have a training program in place, then you're going to have a very difficult time. And it's going to be expensive because hiring somebody costs a lot of money. And if you have to let them go, or if they walk away and you have to hire somebody else, that's money that you spent that's down the drain and you have to go spend it again. So a mature company that's looking to grow, the first thing I would ask them is, have you looked at your processes? Are you comfortable with your processes? Have you ever mapped them out? Have you ever looked at how much time it takes for each individual step in the process that you're doing? And actually work with them in terms of looking at that, mapping out the processes, determining the times, and then asking the employees, hey, can we do better? Why does it take this long? Can we do it better? Is it something that we're not doing? What I'd love to do is to do that and have the employees come in and say, hey, hand somebody a marker and say, walk up there and show me how you walk around every day. Okay, and it was called spaghetti diagrams. And you get 4 or 5 people doing it, and all of a sudden you see all these lines and everything. Before you know, everybody's sitting there laughing at each other, saying, "Why are you walking over there? Why are you doing that?" The truth is that there's a lot of waste that goes on that owners are not aware of, supervisors are not aware of, even the employees are not aware of. When you make them aware, oftentimes the employees come up with solutions and you become more efficient. So if you become more efficient, you actually increase your capacity. If you increase your capacity, you have room to grow. The problem with that is that you have to fill that capacity in order to be efficient, right? So that's kind of that would be my response to your question and what I will tell how I would work with both.
All righty. Well, let's jump into the chat and some greetings and salutations, a lot of resources, and a couple of questions, but a lot of resources in here to where you can grab them right now. Everything from the MARC program to a link to getting loan fees for small manufacturers in fiscal year 2026 waived.
Yeah, I love the MARC program. I think the MARC program is so needed. If you are a capital goods manufacturer, okay, you're going to collect you're going to get partial payments. You're going to get some money up front, you have money progress payments, right? And that will cover your labor and maybe your materials, but not all your labor, because oftentimes it takes a long period of time to build something. Especially, I mean, I have a client, we have a client here in Bakersfield. They do pressurized tanks. It takes a long time to build a pressurized tank. And there are quality things that you have to do as you're building the tank. So they are always in need of working capital to cover the cost of labor till such time that the tank is finished and it gets sold. And the MARC program, they now have that. So it's a great program, and I'm very happy that they've come out with it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And what I like to say is, the MARC program, I don't think it misses the mark. Okay, on that note, our first question in the Q&A, or excuse me, in the chat box is, does equipment leasing funding extend to office space or commercial workspace cost, or is it limited to physical equipment? You want that one, or you want me to take a stab at it, Doug?
I don't mind taking that. In fact, I just finished a curriculum on leasing. if you're leasing a facility and you're leasing space, um, the lease includes everything that's in there, and oftentimes you ought to be negotiating with the landlord for some leasehold improvements. So, such as maybe you want more power, maybe you want subdivisions divided into different offices, and a variety of things. That's the time to do it. That's where a commercial lease comes into play. If you want things like computers or machinery or automobiles or trucks, those are separate commercial leases that you have to use. Go ahead, Kelly. Maybe what I miss?
Well, the question is equipment leasing, and I've always equated equipment leasing more with the more of a option instead of purchasing. So it's a
Yes.
financing arrangement for
Mhm.
assets. And
Yes.
when we get into, and those assets usually have a collateral value, whereas we get into leasehold improvements, there's very limited or no collateral value whatsoever. So that I think
Right.
for me is the criteria difference. So
Yes.
I would think it would be more equipment leasing is going to be for those physical plant assets
Mhm.
that you're leasing rather than purchasing.
Right. And what you need to remember is that if the landlord pays for some of the leasehold improvements and you pay for some of them, they don't belong to you. So when the lease is up and if you leave, whatever money you put in is money that's gone. It's lost. So keep that in the back of your mind as well.
Okay, some other questions. Here's a question. It has to do with somebody who has a AI bot, a chat bot system for phone services and social media. Um, do you think that the manufacturing industry is a good place to advertise for a service like that? Yeah, to answer
Um,
that one, Doug.
that's a tough one. And part of I'm going to partially kick that back to our interns because when I was last in the office, I challenged our interns and said, "You guys are experts in AI. AI. How do we apply AI to manufacturing?" So I'm anxiously waiting for some of their answers. So it's in manufacturing. Um, you have to have a customer service person, and I don't think AI can actually do it. And the reason for that is that if something is shipped and it's broken or it's not on time, uh, they want to talk to a live person and find out what the issue is. If something has been ordered and you want to make sure it's going to be delivered on time, they want to talk to a person. Yes, you could program a system and you can have AI talk to them, but you know, I don't like talking to AI because it doesn't answer my questions. If I call the service center and I have a specific question, I want the specific question answered. I don't want to spend 15 or 20 minutes answering all the AI questions and going through that whole process because I want a specific answer to a specific question. So um, I'm not sure that that's as good an
Well,
idea for service company.
I'm seeing more advanced stuff from a lot of the AI chat boxes, so I think it's a definite possibility. But my advice would be to sign up at the SBDC and talk to an advisor about that particular issue. Maybe then include some of our fine student
Yeah.
interns that are working on AI and also get some advice on some of the funding questions that you ask also. It's very difficult, I think, to go through a funding question in many cases without looking at the entire picture. So it's really looking at that whole thing. Okay. So let's see, what else do we have here? We have a couple questions in the Q&A box, so let's go over to there. Um, Doug, what are you seeing as far as kind of an overview of the types of products that are being manufacturing beside maybe food processing value added in Kern County? Is there anything that jumps out to you as a specific type of product being manufactured?
A lot of ag products, equipment and machinery. Uh, we have actually last time I counted there were four companies that make different types of tanks. So you have tanks that are just used to store grain or water or liquids for farms and ranches. And then you have tanks that are used for storage of different types of fuels. Then you have pressure tanks. And there, that's a very large business. There's a company in Bakersfield that they actually buy chassis, truck chassis, and they build tanks that go on them, and the tanks are used for waste treatment. Somebody has to go empty out all the septic tanks, and somebody has to empty out all the porta potties all over the place. And that's what they build. They have a very successful business doing that. And the company was interesting. The companies, when it started, it was building tanks that haul oil. Okay. And as that market died away, they kind of shifted over into this other market. So they were able to pivot and continue to be successful, continue to grow. So those are a lot of the products that I see being manufactured.
Okay, time for one last question.
Well,
And
one other thing, I've forgotten a very important market. We make a lot of drones in Kern County, over in the Mojave area. There are several companies that actually manufacture drones.
oh,
So
okay, good. Last question. I like this one. What advice would you give a small manufacturer that is trying to diversify from a single custom product to a new line of production, such as a small batch of CNC parts? I
um,
don't, hey,
I
we don't
like
ask
that
easy
question. I
questions
like
here,
that
Doug.
question. And I'd like to visit with this manufacturer and have a long discussion with them about it.
There
There's no
you
simple answer. Okay. There are challenges because a very, very, very smart man who created Lean, his name is Deming, he once said that don't make something unless you're making something that's going to solve somebody's problem. Interesting piece of advice, and a lot of companies don't pay attention to it. Fortunately, they're very large companies and they have a lot of cash, but small businesses can't do that. They have to be very careful. So I would like very much to speak to this individual, sit down and talk to him and talk about it in more detail.
Yeah, and I love the question. I like getting all those eggs, out of one basket. So ways to do that
Yes,
is there
yes.
is there any, we use AI so much, it's almost hard that to almost say the IP now, but at least for me. So is IP something that's going to come up in that conversation as far as trying to diversify new product lines?
It all depends on the size of the business, okay, and who he thinks his customer, who the customers are. I mean, my advice to you, without even seeing you or talking to you, is that if you're going to make parts, who are you going to make them for, and what's the market for them, and what's your competition?
Hmm.
If you're going to make parts for the aerospace industry or for the defense industry, again, I don't know where you're located, but if you're doing that, there's all sorts of quality certifications that you need to consider, along with cyber certifications.
It's great customer discovery tools on trying to find out what your customers really want and what they really need and what they will buy through an
Yes,
interview process. That customer discovery and customer development is really powerful, and it seems like it would really work really well in this situation.
yes, it would.
Well, that's all the time we have, Doug. We're out of time.
Oh,
So, big
goes
thanks,
fast.
Doug Waterman, for joining us, manufacturer extraordinaire. I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll be back next Wednesday with Webinar Wednesday number 371. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you then. Bye bye, everyone.